to you, based on what you've seen, anything accomplished here?
Quite a lot accomplished if you're the North Koreans. You got 2 summits within the space of a year from the United States. You got distance between the United States and the South Koreans. You got reduced military readiness of South Korean and American forces because the president canceled the exercises. You got to keep your 30-some nuclear weapons and your missiles that can hit the United States. You got a pass on human rights and being the largest prison camp in the world. That's a fabulous outcome if you're the North Koreans. I'm relieved that the president didn't agree to something even worse, but he doesn't deserve any credit for creating a circumstance where we're grateful that the outcome isn't worse.
Noah, you tweeted this, and I want to get the timing correct, because you tweeted it before the summit fell apart, but after NBC reported that the United States had dropped its requirement of a full accounting of nuclear weapons on North Korea's side. You tweeted this: "This whole thing is now entirely pointless. What an unmitigated embarrassment."
Yeah, and I haven't reversed my assessment there. I know administration officials push back on that and say that they haven't dropped the request for an inventory, a full accounting of North Korea's nuclear capabilities and weapons and inventory of its capabilities, but they really have. They've been pursuing this for a long time, and it hasn't been forthcoming. Before any of this diplomatic dance began, administration officials began telling the reporters for the New York Times, for example, on background about secret facilities that we were aware of, intimating, I think, to their North Korean counterparts that they really better disclose this sort of stuff because we're going to check it to make sure that we have an honest interlocutor on our hands here. They never received it. Mike Pompeo made visits to Pyongyang with the promise of returning with an inventory. They did not get it. The most meager demonstration of a willingness to engage in a good faith process was not forthcoming. The president deserves some credit for sticking with Mike Pompeo here. I think North Korean negotiators were attempting to see if the American position, no sanctions relief for just the elimination of Pyongyang, was actually Donald Trump's position. I think they were attempting to break the president away from his fellow administration members there, and he didn't break. Good for him. But as Kori said, we were in a very bad position here, and the president simply avoided one landmine. There were many others that we managed to step on over the course of this process.
All right, but let's stay on that, Mark. We know that the president loves a good signing and he loves a win. There were many aides that were worried he was going to give away too much in North Korea because he wanted to keep the news over there, and he wants that Nobel Peace Prize. The fact that we got no deal, can we take that at least as a marginal win?
Well, this is where the chicken really came before the egg. We knew all of this before he left to go over there. You know, there was a dispute between him and everyone else who looked at what was going on in North Korea. And the trip, all of this probably could have been saved if he had listened to everyone else in his administration. Just this past weekend, you had Pompeo even contradicting him on television.
Good point.
Why make a trip all the way over there to then agree with Pompeo? He could just agree with him before he left.
Saved a lot of effort.
Right, and so the sad part about this is the second time, now that Donald Trump has done this is the second time the United States has lost in Vietnam. This is a total embarrassment, and quite frankly, he wants to undo the Iran nuclear deal, but there is no deal in North Korea. The status quo is even worse than what's in place, than the deal we had in place with Iran. So at the end of all of this, you may have no deal in North Korea and no deal of accountability in Iran either. And we're far worse off under those circumstances.
Kori, is there any reason to believe what the administration has told us happened behind closed doors, especially given the president's track record?
No, I don't think so. My guess is that the president walked out before time in order to have a news story other than nothing accomplished. So he gets to look like he's driving a hard bargain when there's no bargain. So I think they have had fundamentally different perceptions of what denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula means. For the North Koreans, it means no American forces in South Korea. And I think the administration has been kidding itself that they are going to be able to get anything short of any kind of denuclearization out of the North Koreans, even in return for the complete cessation of sanctions.
Noah, I want to ask you about Otto Warmbier, because there were some reporters who asked the president about him. Remember, he was the American student who died after being released from North Korea. And they asked the president whether or not Kim Jong Un was responsible. And here's what he said.
I don't believe he knew about it.
Did he say? Did he tell you that he did not? Did Kim Jong Un tell you?
He felt badly about it. I did speak to him. He felt very badly. But he knew the case very well. But he knew it later. In those prisons and those camps, you have a lot of people, and some really bad things happened to Otto. Some really, really bad things.
Why are you?
But he tells me that he didn't know about it, and I will take him at his word.
What's your reaction to that? In the mind of the president, you know, it's a freebie, it costs him nothing, and maybe wins him a point with Kim Jong Un?
It's very strange. With the understanding that I don't have access to American intelligence, I don't know what they know, and perhaps the president is speaking from a more educated position than I am.
You actually think he is?
I don't believe so. It doesn't really make much sense. It sort of echoes of Helsinki, where he seems to think that this is just some cheap flattery that he can get away with and advance his position with his counterpart here. He leaned so heavily into the Otto Warmbier story in last year ahead of the summit, saying that literally that was the reason why we were at this table. It wouldn't have happened unless we had really engaged on that process, and this was a grotesque crime against an American citizen that occurred in a police state, an absolute dictatorship. The notion that that Kim Jong Un is not familiar with what happens in his own prison facilities, his own detention facilities, where psychological torture and forced medication and the sort of stuff that we think Otto Warmbier suffered from is pretty common. It just sort of defies explanation why he would say what he said.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.